Twitter be if Elon Musk had founded Twitter? I think these what if questions are interesting. I just came across a podcast where a person, a British scientist, a zoologist, asked himself, what if Darwin had a spaceship and went through space and did the whole evolutionary theory based on aliens that he finds in space. So I just thought it's the reason I'm using this is just the Gedanken experiment of doing something that is possible under the laws of physics, but certainly not possible in our universe that we live in right now. But it helps you think about certain aspects of whatever you care about. And I think what do we care about right now? The Orange Capital Partners, of course. Elon Musk bought almost 10% stake in Twitter. It's been in the news for a couple of days. And we want to ask the question of, wait, why in this way? We want to ask it not why did you do it, but what would Twitter have been if Elon Musk had founded it? I think that's an interesting counterfactual and worth exploring. Not Even Wrong podcast. It's April 6, 2022. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're down about 5%. The market's down 2%. For the year, we are down 9.6%. The market is down 6.1%. We are underperforming by 3.5%. The market is still open, so these numbers might change. In the last couple of days, we went from up, actually, we're up almost 2% for the year to now down 9.6%. So we had a reversal of almost 10%. Said that many times on this podcast that volatility is not just something we have to live with, it is part of the game. And the reason we say that is because we are invested in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. We believe in the natural Sharpe ratio, in companies doing what they're doing and competing in the real world for business and money. And because they compete for money and we measure their success in money, we are exposed to the financial markets and directly and indirectly to the Federal Reserve and macro environments. And this is what we're dealing with right now. The Federal Reserve is signaling another boost in rates for various reasons, inflation, the Ukraine situation. The inflation is roaring. We have high inflation in the United States and around the world. It's mainly driven by two factors: post-COVID demand and supply chain disruptions, and then second, of course, the disruption, the de-Russianization of the global economy, which creates lots of disruption also in the world. So those two things are complicated. Of course, they all warrant their own podcasts. It's not something we want to brush away. These are important things. For example, we've been working on nat gas and thinking about that as an investment because, well, we have to replace Russia in terms of energy supplier, and one of the replacements would be U.S. natural gas, for example. So this is one of the things that we wanted to talk about here, but not now. What we think we want to do now is ask the question: so what would Twitter have been if Elon Musk had founded it? Now, why is this question even interesting? Well, it's interesting for a couple of things. One is it might answer the question why he's buying a stake. It might answer the question what he wants from it. And it also might answer the question, well, what would Twitter be ideally? Let's say the largest user of Twitter, a person that has been benefiting a lot through the platform, has this, is the richest man in the world and is using it a lot and doing a lot of things with it. And now he decides to get involved. Well, what might he be thinking? Why is he doing this? All these kinds of questions are hypothetical. I think before maybe we'll get a manifesto or we'll get something from Elon Musk that will clarify his thinking, and I'll be very curious about that. But before we get that, I think we're just in the realm of speculation. And again, I think one of the ways to speculate is to do the what if question, to do the counterfactual. So let's think about it. The way I want to do this is I want to think about the following. I want to say, okay, what is the MO of Elon Musk? We have actually 5 companies, I believe, or 4 companies that he started. And he was involved in other things like OpenAI, PayPal. So we have a little bit of data. This is not just pure sort of n equals 1. He has one company, one time he did something. He's done several things, and therefore we can kind of extrapolate from those data points how he would have done Twitter. So there's 2 things that are on top of my mind if I think about Elon Musk companies. He always has a grand vision, a North Star, and it's a technological challenge that is solvable. So, for example, Tesla has a grand vision, of course, to decarbonize transportation. But the technological challenge, which was very big but solvable, was to use what has been used in laptop batteries and maybe in nascent things like iPods and all that stuff. So use the battery technology, the lithium-ion battery technology, and package it in a way that electric cars can be commercially feasible. So that was it wasn't a sort of the great leap forward. It was okay. We have a technology now. Let's go at it. Let's tinker around it. Let's fix it to solve the grand problem, which is decarbonize energy, which we have to do in order to decarbonize energy. What we need is electric cars. Now, we could maybe decarbonize energy in a different way, but given the technological availabilities in the early 2000s, this was the best way to go. If we look at SpaceX, we want to go to Mars. In order to go to Mars, we have to have relaunch technology that is much cheaper, so we can build a business around satellites and business around launching things and all that, and finance the company. So again, it was a great leap forward. Actually, SpaceX was a little bit more bigger leap forward than Tesla, because the technological path wasn't as clear as the Tesla path. But on the other hand, the cost situation in the space industry was so bad that having even solving some of the problems almost promised success there. And I've spoken to venture capitalists that have invested early on in SpaceX and Tesla, and they told me that they thought that actually Tesla was the riskier endeavor than SpaceX. If we take, let's say, Neuralink, again, grand vision to have an interface between the human brain and computers is a grand vision, but the technological pathways are relatively straightforward. This is not something where we need to reinvent the wheel, we need to solve quantum computing or something. We can do it at least step by step. It's baby steps, but it's little baby steps towards a grand vision, again, interconnect humans with computers or something along those lines, which of course is a grand vision. So having said that, now let's think about Twitter. What would Musk have done with Twitter? Well, he would have had a grand vision. Think about that. What would the grand vision be? The grand would be maybe free speech, freedom, or liberate society, or make sure that other thoughts can be transmitted to many people, something along those lines, because it seems like that's what he cares about. But one of the things that I like about the visions of Elon Musk, let's say, of his grand master plans, is they're very tangible. So he doesn't say, for example, we need to solve the climate problem, which is a bad problem. He's saying we need to decarbonize energy, which is a good problem. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Brad Hall and David Deutsch talk about this. When we talk about Popper and problem solving and generally engineering as a problem solving endeavor, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is a good problem and a bad problem? And bad problems are problems like climate change, fairness, like that kind of stuff where yeah, I mean, it's great. It sounds good. It's certainly something that we humans resonate with, but we don't know exactly what it is. And therefore, it's very difficult to solve the problem if we don't know exactly what does fairness mean. Or let's assume we program something. Let's assume we did an algorithm that is fair. We don't really know what fairness means, and therefore it is not a good problem. And this is something David Deutsch says all the time, is like, if I understand it, that means I can program it. And if I don't know how to program it, then that means I don't understand it. So in that sense, let's think about the following. Let's say if Musk was to build an algorithm or program Twitter, what would he program? And I think he would come up with a grand vision or master plan that is programmable. This is my point here. He wouldn't come up with something like free speech, because we don't really know what free speech is. And if we know, then we can execute it. But I think free speech is not something we know. Of course, it's in the First Amendment of our Constitution. And it is a little bit like the porn thing where, well, I know it when I see it, and that's fine. And there's a lot of things in our lives that we're not quite sure about what they are, in a sense that we wouldn't be able to program it. So, for example, I don't know exactly what love is. I don't think I'll be able to program it, but I mean, I feel love, and I have an ability to love, I think. So the same way, I think there are problems, there are maybe not so good problems that we still solve through heuristics. There are problems that are more tangible, more solvable. You know, for example, I can tangibly solve the problem of creating wealth. I can do that. Wealth generation is programmable. It's not programmable in the sense that we can absolutely succeed, but we know what the ingredients are. For example, our principal stack, I believe, is a good approximation of an algorithm that would help us generate wealth. So in that sense, or let's say being a good father is something I can actually execute against. There are certain things, certain criteria that I can set up maybe also with my kids, and then execute against that. So in that sense, I think the grand vision of Twitter has to be something programmable, executable, something that we can algorithmatize. So it should be, instead of free speech, maybe something more along the lines of getting rid of central authorities deciding what is information. So in a sense, maybe what Twitter would be is solving the Byzantine generals problem at scale. That's really what Twitter should be. And now we're, of course, in the conversation of Web3, and maybe he's doing this for blockchain, and I get it. This is all part of the conversation, and rightly so. But again, I don't think that free speech as a goal is a good problem, because again, we don't know what it exactly means. We can put it in our constitution, we can live along those lines, but look what happened during COVID. People weren't allowed to talk about things. During the Trump times, we weren't allowed to say this and that, and even during the Bush times, I remember you couldn't say things that, you know, you were a terrorist if you said something wrong. So there's always these borderline cases. So we really don't have free speech. We have something. Let's say we know what not free speech is. We know what North Korea looks like, or Russia, and we don't want to live like that, and that's fine. But we certainly don't have free speech. It's an idealized form of free speech, and to solve for a problem like that in a business, I think would be very dangerous. But to solve the Byzantine generals problem within the information context, in other words, get rid of central authorities, get rid of people or powerful people deciding what is information, what is right and wrong, and all those types of things. I think that is a valid goal. That is an interesting goal to pursue. And we believe, and this is now the counterfactual, the whole purpose of this episode is to answer the question, what would Elon Musk have done if he had founded Twitter? Well, he would have probably gone along the lines of blockchain and solving for identity, and solving for the problem of deciding of what is and what isn't, by using a decentralized approach. So, and using this approach in our counterfactuals also would answer the question, well, why didn't he have found Twitter? Because Twitter was founded before we had breakthroughs in Byzantine general problem technology, such as Bitcoin and the whole idea of Bitcoin, which is, of course, I'm not talking now about the currency, I'm talking about the protocol, and the idea to solve the Byzantine generals problem through a decentralized approach, through proof of work and things like that. So now we're also a bit closer to the answer, why is he doing this? Well, maybe now there is enough technology out there, there's enough momentum and interest in Twitter, or excuse me, in solving certain problems that Twitter has, such as, let's say, let's use a protocol deciding of what's right and wrong. Let's use a protocol deciding what is trolling, and not a central authority. So all of these things are interesting now, and maybe that's why he's doing it. So we believe that this approach, this counterfactual questioning of what would Musk have done, starts with the question of what would have been the problem that he wanted to solve. And the problem he wanted to solve is to take away the central authority within the information industry away, to take that away from the industry. So nobody decides. No editor, no media company, Murdoch or the New York Times or whoever is in charge. Nobody has the power to decide what is information, what is right, what is wrong. It is decentralized. It is solving the Byzantine generals problem within the information context. This is the goal. And an application could be Twitter, it could be something else, but since he's involved and since we're asking the question, what would he have done if he had been a founder of Twitter, this is the answer. And now we're also understanding why he's doing this, because there is tech. There is enough tech out there now to actually try to solve the problem. Again, before 2000 and I believe it was 12 or something, or 9, I forgot. No, it was 2008 or 9, something like that. So Twitter was founded around that time, but certainly it wasn't thinking along the lines of using the Byzantine general problem solution for its own purposes. Twitter wasn't founded on those purposes. Twitter actually was founded more haphazardly, and therefore also is a bit of a haphazard company. And maybe now with Musk's involvement, we could see more blockchain technology applied towards the Twitter ecosystem, which could improve the company. Now, we are not investing in Twitter. This is not our purpose here, is not to invest in Twitter. The reason we're not investing in Twitter is because it's way too unclear for us what the purpose is and how this whole thing will pan out. But if we see more tangible, let's say if Musk writes in a manifesto or if he gives a presentation, then that would certainly change our minds. But right now we're not investing. But still, we want to ask the question because he runs the company that we have a large investment in. So I think we need to think about things that he does, and this is certainly a very important thing that he's doing. Before I go, I just want to mention one more thing. I think the fact that Twitter is also deteriorating is a big problem, because that means they can't attract talent. And with Musk on the register and on the board, the attraction of talent should also be a lot easier. So to summarize, what would Elon Musk have done if he had founded Twitter? He would have used the Byzantine general problem solution, i.e. Bitcoin or blockchain protocols, to solve the problem of what is and what isn't, to solve the problem of who should be on the platform and how the platform should be conducted. In other words, he would have tried to solve the problem of getting rid of authority within the information context and have a decentralized approach towards deciding what is and what isn't. And of course, also, he would have probably been more successful in attracting talent, which would then have kicked on the flywheel of solving the problem and creating a solution to the problem, which then hopefully would also turn into a successful business. Thank you.